What's up guys, I'm Newbie Dave and today we're making a sheep farm. Let's get started. How's it going, y'all? Hope y'all are having a good week. I did a little bit of exploration in between episodes, and I actually managed to fill in this entire map around our base. I went a little bit further to the northeast, a little bit further west. I was trying to find a jungle biome, which I'll explain a little bit later. But going further west, I didn't find a jungle, but I did find a mesa biome. So that brownish orange area over there is a mesa, formerly Badlands, I think. And the whole place is just covered in terracotta and red sand, so that's going to be a really good resource later on in the game. I'll probably build a nether portal out there to make it easier to get back and forth. So yeah, did a lot more exploration. Let me tell you something. Using swiftness potions when exploring, absolutely the way to go. I'm never exploring without swiftness potions again. That was really fun and easy. Also did a little bit more landscaping. I just placed some spruce leaves around, some hay bales, some jack-o'-lanterns and melons. So these pumpkins right here, they're actually jack-o'-lanterns. I placed them down so that the face is actually facing a wall because I think the jack-o'-lanterns kind of look silly. But they're a great light source, they're good decoration. And so I placed several of those around. And I'm really happy with the way that this whole base is starting to look. I think it looks really good. So, on to today's episode. We are going to be building a sheep farm. I guess you could technically call it a wool farm since what we're going to be farming is wool, not sheep, but you make it by putting sheep into a bunch of different little alcoves, and so to me it's just kind of a sheep farm. So here's all the sheep that I previously put to pasture, really just to kind of get started on this. And I've been breeding them a little bit. I think we're going to need a couple more. We're going to need 16 sheep total. But this is not where we're going to build this farm. So I need to transport all of these sheep over to where the farm's actually going to be. So I'm going to break down this fence and use the wheat to get these guys to follow me. I don't know if I'm going to get all of these sheep in one trip. That would be really nice if I could. I'm just going to have to go very slowly to make sure that none of them get so far away that they stop following me. Okay, so I've got all the sheep over here to their new home. So let me back up a little bit. This sheep farm is going to take up quite a bit of space, almost as much space, if not more, as our iron farm over there. And so the spot that I picked out for it is just past our potion machine. Go a little bit further, and I'm going to build this area in this spot over here. I already cleared out the trees. I like that it's sunken down. Everything so far has kind of been on the same level, and it's just too much of the same thing. So I think I'm going to go ahead and kind of sink the rest of this area down so it's all down here at the same level. Okay, so what exactly is a sheep farm and why are we building it? Like I said, it's not really a farm for sheep as much as it is a farm for wool. And not just white wool. Sheep can actually be dyed all the different colors, and whatever color the sheep is, when you shear it, you get that color wool. So what we're going to do is we're going to dye a bunch of sheep, all the different colors that you can make, and then we're going to set up an automatic shearing system so that whenever the sheep grow their wool, they'll automatically get sheared, and that wool will get collected somewhere. Now, the reason we're doing this is because wool can be used for a number of different things. Making beds, it can be used as a building material. It can be used, since we're going to be getting a lot of it for free, we can use it to kind of outline new builds and new projects, kind of like what I did for the starter home at the very beginning. So it's just a really good resource to have a lot of. Now let's take a second and talk about dyes. There are 16 different colored dyes that you can make in the game. I have all the resources to make all of them except for one. I'm missing the brown dye. That's why I was looking for a jungle biome. The only way I know of to make brown dye is from cocoa beans, and the only place that cocoa beans grow is in a jungle biome. I've also been checking wandering traders, hoping that maybe I can find some cocoa beans from them, but haven't had any luck. So I'm gonna have to leave this one blank for now, and once I find some cocoa beans, come back and add the brown dye. But I've got all of the others. So where do these dyes come from? Well, most dyes in the game come from flowers. And so if you just add a flower to the crafting table or to your own little 2x2 crafting area, you can get a dye that matches the color of that flower, like red or yellow. If you are running low on flowers, if you have like a rare type of flower that you only found one or two of and you don't want to use them all up, what you can do is place the flower on the ground and then bone meal it, and you'll get new copies of that flower. I suggest doing this in an area that doesn't have any grass nearby because the flowers will only grow in empty blocks. So just bone meal those suckers and get lots of extra flowers, and then you have more flowers to make dyes from. Note that that is a Bedrock exclusive feature. On Java Edition you can only bone meal the flowers that are too tall, like roses or peonies. So once you have your flowers, you can just get the dyes from them. And that will give you most of the dyes. I think you can make like red, yellow, blue, magenta, orange from orange tulips, white, light gray. Most of the dyes you can get that way. Some of them you can get by mixing other dyes. So for example, if you don't have any orange tulips, you can mix red and yellow dyes to get orange dyes. Notice that when you mix dyes like this, because it takes 2 dyes to make it, you get 2 dyes from the output. So it's very efficient. Some of the other dyes, like black, I'm not aware of any black flowers. The only way I know of to make black dye is from ink sacs, which you get by killing squid, which you can find in rivers and oceans. Green dye only comes from smelting cactus. Lime green dye you can get from smelting sea cucumbers or by mixing green dye and white dye. Cyan I think comes from mixing blue and green. So some of these come from mixing other dyes, some of them come from smelting different materials. So that's where you can get most of the dyes. If you're not sure where to find a particular color dye, you can just check the wiki and it'll tell you how you can make them. Also, if you just go to the crafting table and look up dye, you select one and it'll tell you one of the resources you can use to make it. It's not going to tell you everything that can make a red dye, but it will tell you red tulip, so you know that there's at least some red flowers that will make red dye. Now, like I said, I am missing the brown dye, but brown sheep will actually spawn naturally. I think there's like a 2 or 3% chance for a brown sheep to spawn in the wild. I was really disappointed because earlier while I was getting ready for this episode, a brown sheep spawned right over here, and I was really excited. I hadn't built the little enclosure here to keep them in yet, and so I went back to my base to get a lead and some fences to kind of keep this guy safe, and when I came back, some wild wolves had killed the brown sheep. Yeah, so I was really bummed about that. Okay, so like I said, this is going to be an automatic sheep farm, which means that there's probably going to be some sort of redstone devices involved. In fact, there's going to be 2 redstone devices used for each sheep. The first one is going to be a new type of device we haven't covered yet, which is called an observer. So an observer is made from cobblestone, 2 redstone, and 1 nether quartz. You get the nether quartz from the nether. I highly recommend using a Fortune 2 or Fortune 3 pickaxe when you mine this stuff up so you can get plenty of it, because it's used in lots of different recipes like observers, but also just you can make quartz blocks for it, which look really nice for building things. So we're going to need one of these for each sheep, so we're going to need 16 total. And what an observer does is it observes the block in front of it, and it emits a redstone signal anytime there is a state change to that block. So if I put some redstone behind this thing and then do anything to the block in front of it, you can see that it emits a redstone signal when the block that it's observing changes. So that's what the observer does. The other block we're going to need is the dispenser, which we use in the iron farm. So that one's a familiar recipe. We need bows, redstone, and cobblestone for a dispenser. Okay, so 16 observers and 16 dispensers. You're also going to need 1 redstone for each of these. And then you'll need a couple of additional building blocks to go around each of these enclosures. I'm going to use cobblestone on top of the dispensers, but I'm also going to use glass panes to go around them. So the way this is going to work is I'll do a little demo over here. So we're going to put an observer in the ground facing the block in front of it. So the arrow on top here, the fat end is the side that it's observing, and the small end is where the redstone signal is going to come out. So this observer is actually observing this block right here. Behind that, we are going to put a piece of redstone. So when this thing emits a redstone signal, it's actually going to go into the block right here. And we're going to put a piece of redstone on top of that, which will then go into a dispenser that sits on top of the observer facing the same direction. So the observer is going to observe this block of grass. Whenever that block of grass changes, it'll emit a redstone signal, which will go into this redstone dust, which will go into this dispenser, which will dispense whatever's inside of it. We're going to put shears inside of it. The sheep will sit in front of the dispenser, and so whenever the sheep eats the grass, the state of the block changes, the dispenser shears the sheep, and the wool will drop on the ground. Eventually the grass block will turn from dirt back into grass. When that happens, the sheep will eat the grass again, and that's what causes the wool to grow. So when the sheep eats the grass, the wool grows, the observer detects that the block changed, it dispenses the shears, and it shears the wool falls on the ground. So that's how the system's going to work. So I'm going to need 16 sheep in total. I don't know how many I have here, but it's not 16, so I'm going to start breeding some of these guys. And then each one of these is going to be dyed a different color. So let me start by putting all of my observers in the ground. Maybe I won't put all of them in the ground because I don't know how far apart I'm going to need to put these. I will start with, I'm going to do these in groups of 2. So I'm going to do 2 here. And so I'm going to do 2 sheep here, and then I'll skip some space. And I'll do, I'll do another 2 here. And let's start with that and we'll see how this goes before I start putting them all down. So observers observing the blocks in front of them, dispensers on top, it needs to be facing this way, and then redstone behind the dispensers. And that's actually it. This thing's incredibly easy to build. Now we need to put some glass panes down to keep the sheep in. So I'm going to surround each of these with glass panes. And unlike fences or walls, you can actually just hop over these. So these need to be at least 2 tall to keep the sheep in. And then I'm going to put cobblestone on top of the dispensers. So that's enough to keep the sheep in. You know what? I need to hold off on the redstone because I need a way to get in there. So I'm going to put cobblestone behind each of these. I'll come back and add the redstone when we're done. Okay, so now we just need to get a sheep inside of each of these little cubby holes. So I'm going to let some of the sheep out. Come on. Gotta be careful here because I don't want all of them coming out. So we'll do this one at a time. So we'll lure the sheep over with some wheat. And you want to be careful during this step because you do not want to fall in there. So crouch the whole time. And I'm going to slide across here to get the sheep up on top. And now I need to get behind him and just kind of gently nudge him into that little cubby hole. So very similar to what we did with the villagers in the iron farm. It's a little bit easier because we have a little bit more space to work with since we went with glass panes instead of glass blocks. Alright, so sheep number 2, come on, and there. Okay, so the sheep are in. Before I close this thing up, I now need to dye them the colors that I want. So I'm going to go with this pattern. That's why I have the dye laid out like this. Each top and bottom pair are going to go together. So I'm going to do black and gray for these first 2. So dye him black, dye him gray. And now we can close this thing up and put the redstone down. Now I'm not going to hook it all up. I'm not going to put the shears in there yet because the wool is going to fall inside, and right now I don't have a way to collect it. So once we get all of this, all the sheep in and the whole thing built, we're going to come back in and build an automatic collection system to actually go pick up all the wool. Now eventually I am going to come by and put a roof on top of all these. Until then, I'm going to go ahead and put some torches on top to avoid anything spawning up there and falling down in with the sheep. No! Come on! Why? Why you gotta be like that? Creepers. Alright, so I've got 8 of the sheep in. The last one down there is going to be brown, so I'm just going to have to wait until I get some cocoa beans to dye that guy. I'm just going to leave him white. I'm going to start on the other side here and kind of work my way back around. Alright, so I've got all of my sheep in their little compartments ready to go. I put the white and the gray one in the very back because they're kind of boring. They're not going to be that interesting. And I am going to come back later and put a covering over all of these, but I want to use the wool from the sheep to do that, which means that we need to kind of finish this before and start collecting some of that wool before I can put the tops on. So I'm just going to leave them open for now. Hopefully, I don't think anything can get in there. So let's talk about the collection system. In order to collect the wool that's going to drop, we're going to run a hopper minecart underneath this whole thing. It's going to go under all of the sheep and all the way around, and anything that the hopper minecart picks up is going to get deposited into a chest. So to start with, we need to get underneath this thing, and I'm going to go down 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and dig a hole next to the sheep so that I know where this minecart needs to go. Okay, so I've got my holes that all go 3 down, and I'm going to go underground and start tunneling underneath and kind of connect all these things up. Alright, so I've got this whole area dug out under here. I dug in between all the holes in a straight path, and then I also dug out on each side by 1 block. And so you can see the bottom of each of the observers here. That lets you know that you're at the right level and that you are at the right, right underneath where you need to be. So our minecart needs to go not under the observers, but 1 block out. So the sheep is actually right here on this block. So I'm going to take some stone bricks and lay down basically a path for this minecart to follow. Okay, and then because of how we built this thing, using glass panes instead of glass blocks or some other sort of full block, there's actually like a block and a half of space in there where the wool could drop. It's either going to drop on the block where the sheep is standing, or it could actually drop in the back half of the block in front of it. Now the hopper is only going to pick up the wool that drops on this block, and so we actually need this thing to basically snake around twice to make sure that it picks up all the wool. So I'm going to make this thing twice as wide just to make sure that we don't miss anything. Okay, so now we can start putting our tracks. So I'm going to go about every 10 or 12 rails with normal rails, and then I'll put down some powered rails. This is like what we did for transporting our villagers to the iron farm previously, where every so often you just have to give it a little boost. Alright, so on this end, the rail is just going to turn around and make its way back on the second side. See, I told you we'd eventually need all these rails. Alright, and when it gets to the end, we're going to just have it run into a solid block and turn around and come back. Now we're going to do something with the beginning portion as well, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and have this go into a solid block, put a powered rail there so it turns around, and I'll make my hopper minecart, and let's test this thing out. So I put this down, it should go around the entire thing. Got one. We want to make sure it doesn't, come to a stop anywhere and get stuck on the rails. Bounce, go all the way back, go through the whole thing, and end up back where it started again. Awesome, that is perfect. So this thing is just going to run continuously once we get it completed. But now we need to actually get it into, we need to get what the hopper minecart collects and deposit it into a different hopper or chest or something. So I think I'm going to, let's see, where do I want this thing to go? I think I want it to come out the back here. So we'll turn this thing and have it come up here. So let me put some stone bricks down. Yeah, this is good. So I'll have it come out, go up, turn, come a little bit further. And now we're going to put a hopper in the ground right below this thing. So the hopper's going to go right here, and it needs to go into a double chest. So let's see. I'm going to go a little bit further out. We need a little bit of extra room. And oh goodness, that's right up against the redstone. I need to go a little bit further so it's not going to be touching this redstone back here. Alright, so we'll put a double chest here. We'll put a hopper going into the double chest. And then we will have these rails connect up to it. And we're going to put a powered rail on top of the hopper. And then we need a solid block behind it that it will bounce off of. Okay, so our minecart is going to come up, go around, and we need it to stop on this hopper when it is when it contains anything, so that the hopper can pull everything out and deposit it in the chest and then go. So we don't want this power rail to always be powered. We need a way to turn it on and off depending on whether or not the minecart is carrying anything. Okay, so our circuit is going to require some redstone devices. So we're going to put a comparator right there, and we're going to flip it so that it puts it into subtraction mode. Okay, next to the comparator we want a solid block, and then on the other side of that block a redstone torch. On top of the redstone torch another solid block, and then a repeater going back this way, and finally one more solid block. So what that's going to do is the comparator will emit a redstone signal when the hopper is empty, which travels through this circuit and powers this rail. If there's anything in the hopper, then it deactivates, the powered rail turns off, and when a powered rail is off, it actually acts like a brake. It'll slow down the minecart that passes over it. Now in theory this would work, and on Java Edition it does. But on Bedrock Edition, there's something about the delay in the redstone signal or something where the minecart will actually hit this and bounce off and start returning before the circuit deactivates. And so we need something else to make this work on Bedrock. And so for that, we're going to introduce a new rail type, the detector rail. We haven't used the detector rail. The recipe for this is a little bit different. A detector rail is made from iron ingots, and then you need a stone pressure plate and a redstone. And so what the detector rail does is it actually emits a redstone signal whenever a minecart passes over it. So you want to skip one rail and go back one more and place a detector rail right there. Then next to this, we're going to dig out a couple blocks. Like that. I'll put two solid blocks next to this and redstone on each of those. Now next to the hopper, if we put redstone here. That might end up going into the hopper, which we don't want because that would like lock the hopper. So we want to put a repeater right there, then another solid block, and redstone on the other side of it. So whenever the minecart passes over this detector rail, it will send a redstone signal all the way back here, and basically it short circuits this, so it will deactivate the powered rail just momentarily. As soon as the minecart gets off the detector rail, this thing will power back on. And so when the minecart passes over it, this will momentarily act like a brake regardless, whether or not there's anything in the minecart. And then if there is anything in the minecart, the hopper will start pulling the items out and the circuit will stay off and the minecart will stay there. So let's give this a shot. I'll put my minecart on there. And to test this out, I'm actually going to put a block right here. Just so the minecart bounces back much sooner and we don't have to wait for it to go all the way around. So we'll put the minecart on. We'll see it goes back and forth. Oh no, we need a little bit more power. I'll try putting one more powered rail here. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, it momentarily deactivates this whenever it passes over that detector rail, which is just enough to bring it to a stop momentarily, and then it bounces off and comes back again. And so if the minecart is carrying anything, that should be just enough pause for it to actually come to a stop for the hopper to pull everything out before it starts going again. So that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to come back down here. I'll replace this block with an actual rail. And at this point, our minecart system is complete, and this thing should just continuously run and pull anything that it picks up into the hopper, which will then get deposited into the hopper over here into the chest. So now that this thing's complete, we can go ahead and start putting shears in all the dispensers. Because we've got our iron farm and I'm kind of stacked on iron, I'm really going to load these things up. Shears don't stack, unfortunately, so I'm going to do this kind of one at a time. And that takes care of all of our shears. So the reason I want so many shears in there is each time the dispenser uses the shears, the durability is going to go down a little bit. It is going to take a while for each of these things to break, but by just loading up more shears in there, this thing should just run for a very long time before the shears all completely run out. So we can see that some of these things have already started to shear. That guy's wool is on the ground, so as the hopper minecart goes around, it should pick that up. There we go. And it will just start running and picking up all the wool. You can see several of these sheep have already been sheared. Some of them haven't. That guy just got sheared. Some of them haven't been sheared yet. That just means that the grass hasn't turned green yet and they haven't eaten it. Once all of these guys are sheared, we should never see them with wool again, because as soon as they get wool by eating grass. And so as soon as that happens, the dispenser will use the shears on them. It will shear the wool that will drop on the ground and get picked up. And so from now on, once they all get sheared, if we ever see them with wool again, then we know that the dispensers have run out of shears and it's time to go replace them. So if we come look over here, we're starting to see all of our colored wool is starting to collect in here. This thing will eventually fill up, and we might want to eventually come back and do some sort of auto sorting system to sort the wool by color into different chests. But for today, that should, this will be good enough. We can manually come clean this out whenever we want. Like I said, I'm going to come back and eventually put some tops on each of these, but it's going to require a lot of the different colored wool first, so I need to let this thing run for a while, so I might do that as a weekend update sometime. But for now, this thing is really done. Yeah. I love this build. It takes some time just because of how many sheep you have to get in here and how many things you have to build and how long the minecart system is. But nothing about this is really that complicated. It's a nice, easy build, and it's a nice auto farm that's going to set you up with a lot of good resources for the rest of the game. And that's going to wrap things up for today. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you're enjoying the whole series. I'm really having a blast doing all this, and I hope that you guys are too. Let me know in the comments if there's any specific builds that you're interested in. I've been doing a lot of farms lately. I really like farms in this game. I like building things that just kind of run themselves. And today we made a sheep farm, and we're going to get lots of wool from it. From this point on, all of the episodes that I'm going to be doing are going to be leading up to the dragon fight. I've decided that we've made a lot of progress. We're at a good spot to start getting ready for the dragon fight. So it's not going to be the next episode. It's not going to be the one after that. There's a couple more things that I want to take care of first. But just know that that is coming, and we're not going to be doing any sort of random one-off things that aren't going to help us get to the dragon. So that is coming up. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this episode, please drop a like, and if you're enjoying the series, please subscribe so that you can get notified as new episodes come out each week. And like I said, if you have any requests for specific builds or any questions of anything, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to respond and help you guys out. Thank y'all, and have a great day.